Welcome back, everyone. We are going to continue Caesar in Gaul. Battle of Vosges. Let's go.
Caesar rested in Bibracte for a short time before moving on. Rumour had already reached him of a Germanic tribe that had crossed the Rhine and was terrorizing Gaul.
So we have another, or maybe Helvetia, I don't think was technically Germanic. I'm not sure. But now we have a different peoples terrorizing people crossing the Rhine. So are they doing this in conquest? Are they doing this in dispute? Are they doing this in migration? We already talked about in the previous video. There's lots of reason for a migration. Not sure.
The Suebi, led by their king Ariovistus, had first arrived in Gaul in 63 BC as mercenaries for the Sequani and Averni in their war against the Aedui, a Roman ally.
Hold on, I'm gonna back that up. We just gotta just look at this. Just look at this. We just gotta appreciate the time and effort of kings and generals and whomever made these maps of showing kind of like and this isn't always exact, but these territorial tribal lines or regions is excellent. Excellent.
Sequani and Averni in their war against the Aedui, a Roman ally. The 15,000 warriors that Ariovistus initially brought proved decisive, helping to secure a crucial victory over the Aedui at the Battle of Magito Briga, which forced the Aedui to become a tributary to the Sequani. In response to this, the Aedui sent an envoy, Diviciacus, to ask Rome for help. But the Republic was still recovering from the political shock of the Catiline conspiracy and was distracted by an Allobroges revolt. The governor of Transalpine Gaul was ordered to help Rome's Gallic allies when possible, and in 59 BC, the Senate named Ariovistus a friend of the people of Rome to pacify him and keep him in check.
You've heard of enemy of the state, so friend of the state.
Ariovistus used that time to consolidate his position. After helping the Sequani, he demanded a third of their lands as payment. The Sequani gave in, and Ariovistus began moving more of his people across the Rhine to settle in this new land.
Wow.
By 58 BC,
so conquest it is.
As many as 120,000 Suebi had now crossed the Rhine and made their home in Gaul. Furthermore, Ariovistus was demanding more Sequani territory in order to settle an extra 24,000 Germans and had been taking hostages in order to keep the Sequani and Aedui obedient. Something had to be done. Following his victory over the Helvetii, Caesar had taken some time to rest in Bibracte. Whilst encamped there, he was visited by a council of Gallic leaders and diplomats, led by Diviciacus. They complimented Caesar on his victory and implored him to intervene in the situation, pointing out that if the Germans continued their conquests, soon the Suebi would be directly bordering Roman territory. Caesar, again, was happy to oblige. As Ariovistus was a friend of Rome, however, Caesar could not immediately go to war. Instead, Caesar first invited Ariovistus to meet him, which was declined. Then he sent a diplomat to Ariovistus, asking him to return the Gallic hostages he had taken and to stop any hostilities. Caesar reminded him that if he were to comply, the Romans would still consider him a friend of Rome and not take any action against him. This was a good deal for Ariovistus. He'd be allowed to keep the lands he had already taken.
It's a steal! It's a steal if he takes this deal.
From the Sequani without a fight. Instead of accepting the terms, Ariovistus doubled down and sent a message back to Caesar saying that if the Romans could conquer where and how they liked, so could he.
So he's inspired by the Roman conquest. He said, "For me and my peoples, I will do the same. However, you're late to the game, buddy. You're late to the game by hundreds and hundreds of years. You do not without a huge alliance with all these tribes, which you've turned on, you're not going to be anywhere near supplied already, even for a territory of Cisalpine Gaul.
At the same time, the 24,000 new Germans who had crossed the Rhine were allowed to raise and pillage the Gallic lands as they
You are just inviting violence, aren't you, Ariovistus?
pleased, with more Germans preparing to cross the river to join Ariovistus. Caesar now had his justification, as he had a legal decree from the Senate to protect Rome's Gallic allies.
Yeah.
He could justify that the Suebi were threatening Rome's borders, and Ariovistus had forfeited his status as a friend of Rome by continuing to pillage the land of Rome's allies. Yet again, Caesar had the chance to market himself as the saviour of Gaul. Gathering his 6 legions, roughly 30,000 men, Caesar set out on the warpath. Both Ariovistus and Caesar recognized the importance of Vesontio, the largest town in the Sequani territories. Well fortified and well supplied, it would be crucial to the war effort. Both forces began marching to the town. However, the Romans, marching day and night, were able to get there first. Caesar rested there briefly while supplying the legions. But as they rested, rumours began reaching the men of the strength and ferocity of the Germans. Even some of Caesar's officers began having their doubts, and it almost seemed as if Caesar would have a mutiny on his hands. Caesar was, however, able to restore order by insisting that he would face Ariovistus with just his most trusted 10th legion if none others would follow.
What is this black space here? Because on this, I was going to say, I wonder if it's mountains, but I see on the left, that's mountains. Are these trees? I'm not sure. I'm going to guess it's forest. Has to be forest.
This inspired a fanatical loyalty in the 10th Legion, whilst the others, motivated by shame at being thought of as cowards, rallied, and the legions began to march out to meet the Suebi. Ariovistus, impressed with the speed at which the Romans had been able to move and take Vesontio, sent messages to Caesar asking for a meeting, with only some cavalry allowed as bodyguards, at the place called Vosges in modern-day Alsace. Caesar agreed, but the meeting did not go well, with both generals reiterating their positions. Ariovistus even went so far as to say that if he were to kill Caesar, there would be many in Rome that would be grateful, showing...
Wait a second. How do you know that? How do you know that? Is it just well known that Caesar is a quote-unquote adversary to some? Or is there some funding this from Rome?
That he knew what the political situation in Rome was. Negotiations broke down after this, and the cavalry on both sides had a minor skirmish before retreating back to their respective camps.
That's crazy.
A few days later, Ariovistus asked for another meeting.
No.
Caesar, sensing a trap, sent his translators. This was just as well, as Ariovistus promptly captured the two and even considered burning them alive. With his plan to capture Caesar having failed, Ariovistus instead moved to battle.
Bro skirmished at the last meeting and then has the gall, no pun intended, to try to capture him? Like, how obvious is that?
His army was composed of 6,000 cavalry, 16,000 light infantry, and the rest heavier infantry, for a total of around 30 to 40,000 men.
Okay, so he feels confident.
Taking Caesar by surprise, Ariovistus marched his force quickly behind Caesar's position and set up camp, cutting off the Romans from their supply lines.
So Ariovistus is kind of smart.
For 5 days, Caesar drew out his army in battle formation, willing to give battle, but Ariovistus was content to wait and strangle Caesar's supply line, only engaging in cavalry skirmishes. The Suebi cavalry fought in a unique fashion. For every horseman, there was an infantryman mixed into their formation.
That's interesting. Feels like you're going to get ran over by horses.
These men were lightly armed in order to keep up with the cavalry.
How are you going to keep up with a horse?
And together provided a flexible and difficult force to handle, and the Roman cavalry got the worst of the fighting.
Caesar's in not a good spot here.
Caesar, knowing that he would have to do something to break the stalemate or else risk being starved out, formed his legions into 3 lines. He marched this force past the Suebi position and ordered the 3rd line to begin construction of a 2nd camp, whilst the first 2 lines formed up to defend them. Ariovistus sent all of his light infantry and cavalry to harass the legionaries, but seemed reluctant to commit his entire force, and so they were easily held off by the Romans. With the 2nd camp complete, Caesar left 2 legions and part of his auxiliaries to defend it, whilst his other 4 legions returned to the main camp. Realizing that Caesar would now be able to use this 2nd camp to reconnect with his supply line, Ariovistus sent part of his army to attack this 2nd camp. The fighting was tough, lasting from midday into the evening, but eventually the Romans were able to repel the attack and even took some prisoners.
Not looking good now for Ariovistus. Now he's on the back foot.
Upon questioning these Suebi, Caesar learnt that Ariovistus had apparently been told by his priests not to commit his army until after the new moon, which was why he had not used his whole army to prevent the legions constructing their 2nd camp.
Is that an omen or something?
Having learnt this, Caesar decided to go on the offensive. Leaving a small garrison in each camp, Caesar formed his 6 legions into a triple-axis formation with his cavalry in reserve and marched on the Suebi camp. The Germans came out to meet him, forming their wagons and baggage train into a semicircle behind them, their women standing on them urging the men on. Noticing that the German left flank was slightly weaker, Caesar positioned himself opposite on the Roman right and gave the order for his men to charge. But as he did, the Suebi also charged. Their assault was so fast and surprising that the Romans had to drop their pila before they could even throw them, drawing their swords and fighting in hand-to-hand combat.
Wow.
The Germans managed to form a shield wall, and neither side seemed able to gain an upper hand.
He said he wasn't going to attack till the new moon. Didn't say he was going to defend.
Having been unable to throw their javelins before charging, the Romans struggled to break the shield wall as easily as they had at the Battle of Bibracte. After some hard fighting, the Roman right, led by Caesar, started to push back the German left. However, the Suebi on the right outnumbered their Roman opponents and were starting to get the upper hand. The Roman cavalry, led by the son of Triumvir Marcus Licinius Crassus, Publius, had not yet engaged in the battle, and from his position he could see the Roman left starting to crumble. Using his own initiative, Crassus led the 3rd line, which had been kept in reserve, to support the flank, arriving just in time to avoid a disaster. With their left flank broken and their right now under severe pressure, the Suebi army broke and ran. It is not known how many people died in this battle, but the Germans attempting to retreat through their wagons were said to have been packed so tightly that the dead could not even fall over.
Wow. Dang. Can't even fall over.
The entire Suebi force, including Ariovistus, fled back across the Rhine, pursued by the Roman cavalry. Caesar had won 2 important campaigns in one season.
That's 2 tributes. 2 triumphs.
Now he left Labienus to winter with the legions in Sequani territory, whilst he attended to his governing duties in Cisalpine Gaul.
Yeah, all the same time he's of course being a governor. And wow, just like that, guys, we have seen 2. That's where we'll stop to. That we've seen 2 encroachments into the allied Gallic territories, the Helvetii and the Suebi, be taken down pretty easily by Caesar. This is why he's governor of this area. He knows what he's doing. He's a protectorate of these people. Got about an hour left of this video to watch with you guys, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave some video recommendations for what's coming after this. I can't wait. Until next time, peace out. Bye-bye.